Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. Enough of these masks. The question of the evening is, why won't so many people wake up to the fact that conspiracies are real? They happen every day. To refresh your memory, a conspiracy exists anytime two or more people get together and do something that's illegal and or harmful. That's a very common occurrence. When the narcissistic husband leaves his wife at home and goes over to his mistress's home or invites her to the no-tell motel for an afternoon delight, and then comes home that night, and the wife may sniff him and smell lady's perfume blended in with his own. She may find lipstick smudges on his collar. She may have seen his car at the no-tell motel. Regardless, in any of those situations, that's a conspiracy. You can relate that to when we're told something in media that's a story. Well, that story would be the equivalent of the spouse saying,
I wasn't with another woman. This is paint. There is paint on my shirt. I was painting today. Oh, my hair's messed up? Well, that's because I went to the car wash and accidentally left my window open and it got all wet and a mess.
Or whatever false information's given. That is a conspiracy. It's pointless and retarded to approach that lady, as the husband might do, once she's caught on to the fishiness. He may say,
oh, you're being a stupid conspiracy theorist. You're being paranoid.
Or whatever they say. They try to discredit you if you approach them with their false information and tell them, hey, this is false, this is a lie, you're doing something you shouldn't. And rather than accept the facts and take accountability like our narcissistic creatures, they'll make excuses and they'll say that you're paranoid, and some of these even will see to it that you don't have the ability to check up on them anymore. In other similar situations, when, for example, someone looks into something that doesn't seem quite right and they discover something they shouldn't, such as maybe they're in some Catholic school and the teachers are nuns. Does she walk in and notice the teacher with some man doing things she shouldn't be doing? That's because she was in free time and snuck around and looked into the door and saw something. A lot of times these creatures that run these conspiracies will see to it that she's punished. How dare she find out what she's not supposed to know? And they may make a new rule. From now on, all children are locked up between these hours because those are the very hours that this child snuck. Our media is CIA owned, and it's basically propaganda 24/7. It's not like it used to be when we'd have news 2-3 times a night and that's it. Now it's broadcast all day and night, and you can pretty much tell the phony stories, the ones that are controlled by them, those are the ones that you see 24/7, especially like when the president gets involved and starts speaking about it. In most of our lives, if we do something crazy or obnoxious or get in some situation that's violent or tragic, it's very rare that we would be on all of the networks. It's very rare that the president would be tweeting things about our situation and what we've done or what we were involved in. It's only the ones they orchestrate. And that's a conspiracy. Propaganda is legal, which means the media is free to tell a story and blast that story over and over, hour after hour, including witnesses, supposed victims of tragic events. And they'll be talking to the camera as if it's real. You won't know any different. You'll turn on the television and watch it and think, oh, wow, that's a terrible thing that happened. The problem is they never announce beforehand, oh, our next story will be a propaganda piece that we've created because we want to get you people out there to turn yourselves against guns so we can confiscate them all for our agenda. Be prepared, here it comes. They will never do that. They never even talk about the fact that they're allowed to do that. They just simply speak to you as if they're telling the truth. The point here is they don't tell the truth. And we know they don't tell the truth. Just a few minor examples. A few years back, we had a president who was on the television all the time talking about how Iraq had these weapons of mass destruction. And because of that, we're going to have to fight them. We need to go to war.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Which war is a psychopathic concept. It involves doing things that you would never want done to yourself, such as if you're a soldier in a different country, you're told to bomb a place where a bunch of civilians live, people that have nothing to do with whatever it is you're there for, which is probably a lie based on another conspiracy. It's killing an innocent family, blowing them up just at random. If you're the person doing it, you should be able to ask yourself, would I want someone to throw a bomb in my home and destroy my family? No. but they do it anyway because they're order followers. It's psychopathic because it's something they would never want done to themselves, and yet they're doing it. And let's not forget that time we had that girl on television crying to the microphone about how she went into the hospitals and she saw babies being pulled out of incubators and thrown on the floor in Kuwait. It was just so horrible.
While I was there, I saw the soldiers coming to the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died.
Which pulled at the heartstrings of us because we're being led by this false information. Those are just two little examples. What they demonstrate is how dangerous the media is. It's the enemy of the people. It shares stories like that which get people to become enraged. Like recently with this George Floyd story. They deliberately put that out and made it so it's on the news all the time so everybody everywhere hears it. And the truth of the matter is, if it was even real, it was a policeman abusing his authority and murdering a person. Period. It has nothing to do with color. But they've turned it into a racial situation because for some reason they love to stir up division between the races, the black and the white. So they want to have a white person oppressing a black one and show it 24/7, so then people are talking about it and that enrages people. Then what do? They tear up property, destroy schools, burn down buildings. And I'm thinking, okay, if you're mad about something a policeman did in some other state, why are you destroying the local school where your children go? Why are you burning down buildings? Well, typically it's not the people in the neighborhoods that are doing it, I found. It's actually groups that either George Soros or his son have appointed. I saw this manual that told the rules and how you're supposed to not hit people in this place, not hit people in that place, do this and do that, and use this network to communicate so you don't get listened to by police, and all these different rules and their sick agenda, and their idea is to create civil unrest. Well, that is a conspiracy. That's several people agreeing to do illegal things, to tear up communities, probably to pull in a martial law. They have this ideology that classifies certain people as the enemy, which is all based on fabrication. That's a conspiracy. It's real. I've seen when stories come up that are actually true, revealing the truth about some story that either wasn't in the news or it was, and it was dismantled, told how it really happened. The news people love to come on and just say the words, oh, that's a false claim, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, oh, that's fake news, but they don't qualify their words, as if we're just supposed to believe them. Oh, well, because they said it's fake news, well, that means it's fake news. What is this conspiracy theory where we covered it before? It's a CIA-invented term. It's designed to discredit people who dare to question the narrative. So most people just turn on their television, listen to the news. They believe that they've become more informed with what's going on in this world. They think I'm a special person because I know what's happening in my world. The problem is the information they've listened to is false many times. They don't even consider that could be an option, like the two examples I gave in the past. We've seen how the media will broadcast information that's blatantly false that we don't know at the time, and yet we react to it. Whatever reaction that may be could be a horrible murder of a bunch of people, and people everywhere are going to watch that and think, oh, what a terrible thing, I could have been there, oh, that's an awful thing. Often these things that are given all this coverage have an agenda behind them, whether it's taking guns away, adding more surveillance to people's lives, for your safety, of course, or many other agendas with that Hegelian dialectic they use. But when it comes to people not believing the truth, when, for example, you've seen a news story that's full of holes that only is discovered if you look into the details closely. A lot of times you can discover on your own just by looking at the information they're giving you, thinking about it, or looking at several networks covering the same story and listening to the details and just putting them all out on a piece of paper and thinking, okay, they said it was one killer, this one said it was two killers, this witness said there were three, and you have to look at it all and think, well, the idea is you're supposed to believe it. Whenever they told you there were weapons of mass destruction which led to a dangerous war, well, that was something that they thought at the time. Even though it's probably true that they knew all along, but they manipulated. They told this story to the nation in order to get them fired up, aggravated, and ready to go fight. It reminds me of grade school and the playground. Little Susie is jealous of little Timmy and his friends. She goes to little Timmy, who she's aware loves dogs. and has two of his own. He talks about his dogs day and night. Little Susie is jealous of his relationship with Tabitha, so she goes over to Timmy and says,
Hey, you know Tabitha? She's a dog killer. I saw her killing dogs. She learned that you had two, and she's gonna go after him. She's gonna kill him.
and all this is fabricated. What does it do? Timmy gets enraged because he loves his doggies. So he goes to that Tabitha and smacks her in the face, calls her names and yells and causes all kinds of problems. Well, all this was false, but it was manipulated by Susie. I think one major reason people don't believe in conspiracies, in fact it's been turned into a dirty word. I've read comments on videos or on websites where they say, oh, that's just a conspiracy, and I think, well, so? Conspiracies are real. They happen every day and night. People have learned through TV mind control to discount or discredit anything that's labeled as a conspiracy. And that's by design. But it's time we learn to see through that, because conspiracies are very real. That derogatory name is designed to keep you quiet. So if you hear the official story on the news tomorrow, but you know something about someone involved and think that's not true, this is what's really going on, you'll be labeled the conspiracy theorist, which we've covered elsewhere as well. Just to remind you that you could say, well, then a police detective is a conspiracy theorist. That's their job, because they often will find a situation where there's been a crime committed by two or more people, and they have to figure out what happened by looking at the details. So they're a conspiracy theorist because they're coming up with a theory about what happened that caused this crime. I believe that I have an explanation as to why these people are so difficult to wake up from their comfortable reality, which isn't reality at all. And I think what it comes down to is comfort. They're comfortable in their lives. Their lives may be designed around, they wake up each morning and they go in front of their television, they turn on the news, and they think that they're getting informed with what's going on in this world. They've done this for years. They've listened to these tales that our wonderful news puppet media shares. They just take it all in. They don't think about it critically. They don't watch the show like you might with your little sister who lies all the time. If she comes forward and says,
Mommy, I have to tell you something.
as you hear her talking, whatever she says, you'll be thinking to yourself, yeah, what kind of scheme is she up to now? People don't think of the news media like that. They switch off their brain from fantasy land when they're watching movies, and they just listen and they take it all in as being reported. They have underlying beliefs that the people on the news are here to help us. They want to share the truth with us and what's going on in this world. They want us to know what's happening. They care about us. Well, honey, no, they don't. They do believe that, and that's like part of their personality, part of who they are. If someone comes along and says, hey, you know that story you saw about that person that was murdered in the street? That wasn't what you thought it was. Their brain is going to be thinking, I know what I saw, I believe it, and I've already made emotional reactions to it. No one's going to come along and tell me it's not true. And then they'll attack you if you try to tell them. And they'll say,
You don't know what you're talking about. You must be listening to a Trump supporter.
because they're fighting it. Why? Because of comfort. Because they believe the way they believe. They're set into this way. They've already established a trust with this mind control mechanism called the mainstream media. And the idea of being deceived by something they trust so greatly is just unfathomable. They just cannot accept that. They just won't accept the fact that they're being deceived. And that's where that phrase comes in.
It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled.
And that's what we've got going on here. They're set in their ways. They believe what they see. They ignore and excuse away the fact that things in the past these same people have brought us were lies, like the weapons of mass destruction, the incubator babies, the Gulf of Tonkin, and all these different things that have happened throughout history. Yet, the latest one comes out, they're all embracing it, and they must just excuse away the previous indiscretion, and they must think, oh, well, that must be what they thought at the time. Well, now this is what we think, and this is real, and it's the same thing over and over. These people don't catch on. They just keep believing. But on top of this, that's part of who they are, and there's also something else involved. What you're representing is you're basically a threat to their existence. You are telling them, hey, what you think isn't right and here's why. Well, they don't want to hear that because that's all they have. It's what they've learned, that's what they've listened to, that's what they've done all their life, and you are threatening to tear apart their entire structure that they've built based on belief in this false system. They know that if you were to show them the evidence, what you're saying, prove beyond a reasonable doubt that what they're believing is actually a product of manipulation, mind control, which is what the government word means. If you break it up into two words, they mean mind and they mean control. And they don't want to have to do what's necessary, which would be to completely overthrow their entire thought process. It's much easier to cling on to it and just accuse you of being crazy or brainwashed or whatever. And the fact is that sick is they're the ones who are brainwashed. They're in a system of brainwashing, and they don't even know that they're in such an experiment or such a situation. They think that what they know is right, and that anything that comes contrary to it must be wrong, despite the evidence. And that's what's amazing, too, is when you find someone who's emotionally involved in some news story and really believes it's true, and you've got ample evidence to prove that it's not what they think, you try to show it to them, and it falls on deaf ears. Kind of like with some of these politicians. We have some very corrupt ones, yet there are still people out there who think certain ones from the past are excellent leaders, and I just look at that and think, well, obviously you're misinformed. They've been informed by the media, which is programming them to believe a certain way. So I realize there are different networks. They look like that they're in competition with each other, and they bicker back and forth. They're all owned by the same people, and that's all by design to keep the people divided, because there are so many things like the IRS or the fake money system we have that we could be all getting together on and demanding change for, but they control the narrative. They don't discuss those things. They discuss other things that they've invented or created. It seems to be too much to ask a person to stop and think, wait a minute, I've been going about this all wrong. It's very overwhelming for a person. Red pill, they call it, because they've been indoctrinated for so long and don't know that they're being indoctrinated. They just think that that's reality when they turn the television on. They don't want to hear someone come along and say, hey, all that's propaganda. It's legal, you know. They don't want to hear it. It's amazing because I have family and friends that I've brought clear evidence to about certain matters, and it's like it goes on deaf ears. They don't even hear it or register it. They don't want to. They want to cling to their fantasy reality. So I've learned in that case it's not necessarily worth your energy to try to convince them. All you can really do is bring them to the information. Like the horse you bring to water, but you just can't force it to drink, unfortunately. Oftentimes, if you plant the seeds by just showing them the information, it may sink in at a later time, when something happens that doesn't make sense that they notice. Otherwise, they'll probably argue with you. They'll tell you that they don't share your opinion. And I have to say, it's not a matter of opinion, it's facts. You're believing an opinion by watching your television and believing what's said. I'm here to say, hey, what you're being told is not accurate, and here's why. We can't control other people in that manner. Many will later come to you and want to know more, which probably will be happening more often in recent times because of recent events. It can be frustrating. It's not worth your energy if they're not receptive to the truth. You just have to accept that they're still in that program you were in, because I was in that program once too. I was raised to believe, like when I'd ask parents, say, hey, I heard that this happened. Did it happen? And I'd be told, well, I don't know, check the newspaper, check the news, see if it's in there, as if that's like the ultimate authority. And it really should be, but unfortunately it's not, because it's completely controlled by the same people who fuel the censorship of various platforms. It's just interesting to think, though, when they have these fact checkers and things like that, when stories come out such as the Jussie Smollett case. Imagine if when that first came out that this young black performer was attacked by racist whites and it was terrible. Imagine that's the story, and let's say I was his neighbor and I happened to watch the whole thing and listen in through the walls and hear him say,
hey, I want to orchestrate this. I want you to do this and all that stuff.
And I came forward and I put a video out and said, yes, this guy who's claiming to be attacked, he orchestrated it. It was phony. I would be labeled as spreading false information and censored when I was revealing the truth. You see, it's a truth that they want control over. If the story's going to come out that it was fake, they're going to control that. I'm not, so I will be silenced, accused of fake news, which is ridiculous, especially if you consider the stuff with the masks. We're supposed to trust these authorities who, on first step, will say,
United States, people should not be walking around with masks. You're sure of it, because people are listening really closely to this. Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask.
Oh, you don't need a mask. There's no need to wear a mask.
And then later, oh,
Everyone must wear a mask.
and you think, wait a minute, how's that? And then the little Keebler elf, Dr. Fauci, says,
Let me explain. The reason I said that was that he didn't want the healthcare workers to be without masks.
which tells me he's manipulating, because let's just claim the masks are effective, even though I've heard they're as effective as trying to keep a mosquito out with a chain link fence, but let's just ignore that and assume they are effective. Well, then he's done a disservice to us to manipulate us. He claimed we didn't want the healthcare workers to be without, as if we could raid every medical supply store and take every mask they have off their shelves, which is not even realistic. That's enough to tell you this person's corrupt. It's just telling us what it wants us to hear in order for us to behave in a certain way, which is the way the whole system seems to work. I believe that one benefit I've achieved from dealing with these types of creatures in so many cases is I've developed that sense of intuition, even more so when I see something on television, especially if I know the agenda behind it. For example, when they're telling us now, oh, it's a second wave. We've got this many more cases, and I'm thinking, okay, well, you've also got a bunch more tests that you're forcing on everyone. You're making people take them before they can go back to work. So when you've got a test that's 80% false positives, you're going to have a lot more cases. What they fail to mention often is the fact that the number of deaths is way down. They choose to spin it the way that they want for the reaction they're after, which is fear. People who are in fear are easier to control. That's a technique we learn from our narcissist creatures as well. They'll try to put you in fear. Like if you're dependent upon them for something and you discover one of their lies, they'll try to make it out so you'll be threatened, thinking, oh no, I better not pursue this because I might risk being ejected from this. If you're relying on them, usually they're relying on you though, but it's the same principle. When you've seen it so many times in person, then you know that that's what's going on. Those who don't, who follow every word their leaders say, they're like you during your idealization phase. They don't know or have any idea that there'd ever be the possibility that the person they're with could be lying to them. It's just not a thought that enters their mind. When you were in your love bombing, and if a stranger came up to you and said,
Hey, that person you're with is no good.
you won't want to believe that, just like with the truth. So you'll be thinking to yourself, I love this person. I have such fun times with this person. Who is this to tell me that you're stupid, you're a fool? And you would reject them just like people reject the truth because you're in your little reality that's false, but you don't know it, so you're going to defend it. And what's terrible is oftentimes once this is all over, you think back and think that person was trying to help me, and I blew them off and threatened them. Oh no. It's usually too late. That's why it's a good idea not to confront the new partner and try to tell him, because the creature itself will just say you're trying to cause problems, and it doesn't matter how factual your information is. It's the same concept. That's why I've brought this up in this discussion, because it's kind of a mixture between what we're dealing with in our realities as well as how it applies to these narcissistic creatures and relationships with them. Now, I've known some people who have been involved in such a relationship, but sometimes maybe they just had one. So they're not really well versed in it. It was like to them, oh, this was a fluke. I got with the wrong person. It was a mistake. It's over. But if you've been with several, you start to see patterns and realize these people all operate in the same way. And then you're quicker to detect them. And then the mistake we can make with a new person is to say, hey, I detect this because I've seen it before. It's a cycle that repeats over and over. Back to the media, how people seem to just believe it. They don't want to question it. They're very resistant to change their views on it. There have been numerous examples of false information that was told as true, that resulted in disasters, that was later told the truth about. My question would be, once we've seen a big media story that turned out to be false, and then we've seen another one that turned out to be false, and another, why is it that when the most recent one comes up, we're just buying into it again? I'm thinking, okay, they've lied to you this time, they've lied to you that time, and you still believe them? Why? I think of it as the spouse that I mentioned before. He snuck out and went to the no-tell motel with his secretary or whoever during the day when he was supposed to be working. The wife found out. She was suspicious about him leaving and saying he was going to be gone late. And then when she found out what was going on, he of course lied at first. And when she produced photographs of his car there, him walking out with his underwear on, holding on to a girl's hand, he couldn't keep it secret anymore. Imagine him then admitting, okay, yes, I had the affair with her that one day, but only that one time. Do you think that if she says, oh, okay, lets it pass, and then they stay together, and another time he says the same thing, I'm going to be home late tonight, and she does the same sleuthing and finds out he's gone right to the same motel again, and then later says, oh, I promise I'll never do it again. Is she going to keep believing him? I would think the answer would be no. But these people with this media thing, they seem to believe it no matter what it says. Because they believe, well, everyone believes the official story, so I believe the official story. I fit in. They don't want to be be an outsider. They don't want to be a person who questions the narrative. They just want to accept, believe, and proceed. The problem with this is, when you're given information, it affects the decisions you make. So if you're told a specific story about a specific thing, well, that's going to influence your thoughts about that specific thing, and may even alter your behavior in the future regarding a specific thing. Such as, in the olden days, we were always at risk for catching a flu, but not once did we ever consider putting a mask over our face because we might catch a flu. With the most recent affliction going on, it supposedly is very similar, if not the same, mortality rate as the flu, yet people are rushing out covering their faces day and night. My thoughts are, well, wait a second, we had the same chance of getting another virus for years and nobody ever considered putting a mask on. Well, that's mind control. The television comes on and tells you these things and puts these supposed experts who have hidden agendas, which are more conspiracies, that will end up directly funding them in the end, and the people believe it. They put these masks on and wear them, probably making them sick. I saw one video from, I think it was the CDC, saying, you can make a mask. You can use an old scarf. And my thoughts were, okay, you're going to take an old scarf. What if it's full of sick bacteria and filth, and you're going to put that over your nose and mouth for hours and breathe that crap in and out? That will probably send you to your deathbed. But yet they're saying it on television. I saw an article stating you should wear a mask, even though previously Dr. Fauci had said there's no reason for anyone to be wearing a mask in the USA. And now they're saying, oh, you should wear it. And then stores are saying you have to wear it to come in and so on. Their stories change. The point of the propaganda article was to tell you how you should wear a mask. Below that, it had these studies listed, maybe 10. I noticed there were no links. It's not like you could click on the link to the study. The idea is, superficially, you're supposed to find the article. Oh, you should wear masks. You should see the studies and think, oh, that's impressive. I don't care about them. I'm just going to read. And then it says whatever it says about doing something that's potentially harmful. And then people think, I'm informed. I know what's going on. Well, it turns out if you look at those links, you can't click them. If you look them up individually, you'll find that none of these links are even about masks. They're about the disease and transmitting it and various other things, but not about masks. And if you look further into the masks, you'll find the words, more studies are needed regarding the effectiveness of masks. So it's like a big gaslighting expedition for the public, because most people won't look into the link. They won't look into the study. They'll just see, oh, studies, look at that. Oh, that's impressive. I believe it. It's manipulation and mind control, which is very narcissistic or psychopathic. So that's why I believe that many of us who have been involved with these creatures find it easier to believe that it's possible for the powers that shouldn't be to deceive us or try to deceive us. Before we met our creature, though, we probably thought that's foolish to disbelieve someone who likes us and is trying to help us. If someone were to suggest, like, you're dating a monster, you might think, oh, you're just jealous because you want him or her, which is often what the creature will tell you if you say, hey, I just heard from someone, you're an awful monster.
Oh, she's just jealous, she wants me.
But you'll hear. It's the same type of thing here. We can't believe everything we hear just because it's on the television. In fact, the more time they spend on a story, the more likely it's either false completely, it has a grain of truth, like the narcissist lies, but the rest is a lie. Usually the main part is a lie. Maybe a slight truth surrounded in lies. Which reminds me of, like, your narcissistic creature went to the bar last night by itself because it was thirsty for a drink. Oh, but it didn't do anything. But it came home 6 hours late. In that case, the partial truth was, well, it went to that bar, but the rest was fabrication.
Oh, I fell asleep in the back. I was alone. No one was there. Oh.
Right. A regular person who's not informed, who's not experienced with this, might say, oh, that's a terrible thing. You got stuck there all by yourself. I wish I was there to help you. And that's how the regular people are with this media. They just take it in and believe it. And those of us who know better are often criticized, which is a sad thing, because you'd think the person being victimized would like to know that they are, just like the regular public watching a news story. But I see it as terrorism in many cases. There are some murderous stories that are completely false, that are just created to get a certain reaction. The result of this is people do suffer emotionally. They hear these stories about this horrific thing. They think to themselves, oh, what an awful thing. Just like you might be if your closest relative had their arm chopped off or died suddenly. Well, that would be like devastating to you. Well, this is like spread out to the masses, stories about something that's very similar to everyone in their lives, like some type of person got involved in this horrible thing, because people have empathy generally, so they'll listen to the story and think, well, that could happen to me. Oh, and they just feel awful. Well, they're being terrorized because they're feeling horrible about a terrible tragedy, which in many cases never even happened. Or the person they said is dead is still alive. They just assume a new identity or do some other kind of conspiracy. It's a shame. It's important to be informed because the decisions we make are based on the information we know. And if we're given a bunch of BS, that can alter our behavior, result in situations we'd rather not have. I can give you an example of mind control and how it works. You hear those words and probably think, oh, I could never be mind controlled. Yes, you can. We all have been. Let's say there's a listing of the cause of death over the past so many years. At the top of the list would probably be something like medical situations, malpractice, doctor errors, medication errors, a heart attack, a health issue. And like way down at the bottom of the list, homicide with a firearm as far as the numbers of deaths per year. Then you'll see a news event involving a gun being used illegally. Tearless victims or survivors on the television saying, oh, this happened, oh. And they won't seem too upset usually. But that's going to send a message that a person used a firearm illegally and resulted in death. Well, that's a horrible thing. Imagine this same type of story showing up the next week and the next week. Through the media, it's possible to make it seem like everywhere you turn there's another shooting and people are dying. Even though very few are, in fact, more are dying from those things we listed above. And then you see these people protesting or talking on television saying,
We must save the children.
A thinking person will think, well then why don't you look at the list of the leading causes of death and attack number 1 first. They never do that. Those stories don't appear on the news. We don't hear about those. We only hear about the ones they want us to hear, which are designed to program us into thinking, oh my goodness, more violence, oh, guns, bad, yes, ban them. Here, I'll give you mine, so when a thief and robber doesn't obey the laws, comes to shoot me and kill me, I'll be able to use my slingshot. That'll be good. No, it isn't. It's retarded and ridiculous to punish people who obey the law and use their firearms legally and would never use them for any kind of mass killing, to take that away from them because some other person chose to break the law, obtain a gun illegally, used it to murder, which is already illegal, by the way. Yet we hear these politicians thinking, oh, because of this shooting,
We're going to take away the guns from the good people.
which is a trick and a scam. It's a conspiracy, because that will leave the population unarmed, which means they can easily send their contact tracer to your home to spy on you, which is a whole different story. But without any opposition, that'll be easy, just like with those gun-free zones we've talked about. I think that's what that contact tracing is all about. It's a way to have control, to know every single person a person's spoken with and been around. And I think it's all overreacting to this pet disease of Keebler-Elf, who apparently patented it and knew it was coming. I wonder how he knew. Maybe there's a conspiracy involved.
I don't know what to do.
I got so sick of wearing these goddamn masks.
Our government doesn't have any right to protect individuals. They're here to protect our rights only.
But I figured if you can't beat them, join them. Because I recalled a few years back, on Halloween I was dressed up like the Bride of Frankenstein, and when I went to my local convenience store there was a sign up, and it said, no masks.
I was shocked to see this time it said mask required. And then it made me wonder, well, why didn't they want masks on Halloween? I know why. Because people might steal. Bingo! So that gave me a brilliant idea to turn this crisis around and make it work for me and give me what I want. So I utilized my mask and I wore it proudly. As I went on into Walmart, I brought a duffel bag and I just stuffed it with Tampax, glue so I could sniff it, liquor, donuts, panties, bras, silicone spray, DVDs. I even got a few iPads. I just threw them all in there, ran out the door, and nobody caught me.
The police are outside.
Ah!
I'm just kidding.
How could you ever do that again?
I have a new career. Let's turn this crisis around and make it work for us.
Narcopath thrives.
Do that.